Dorothy Puente, Death House Lady, who turned her house's backyard into a graveyard for corpses. Let's play a game. I will give you a word and you have to tell me the first word which comes into your mind after hearing that. So, the word is granny. Tell me the first image in your mind which came right after I said the word. I think most of you have thought about your grannies, while the image was of a woman in her 70s or 80s, with an innocent face, all gray hair, and yes, the granny essential glasses, right? Well, most of us think like that about old age grannies. We believe that they are a picture of innocence, warmth, and love. But is that always true? I guess not, because the case which I am going to explain today proves that some things sometimes might not look the way they are in reality. The reality gets twisted and dark because sometimes people are much darker than the image we have in our minds about them. Welcome to AF Crime, the channel that brings you fascinating crimes all around the world. If you're interested in this kind of content, then this channel is for you. Make sure to like this video, click on the subscribe button, and turn on the notification bell to keep you updated on our recent uploads. Now, let's get right into the video and investigate more about this case where the criminal deceived even the police, not once or twice, but innumerable times until she was finally caught. It was a fine summer day in Sacramento in the 80s. 46-year-old Dorothy had decided to file for a restraining order against her third husband, Roberto Jose Puente. If you looked at her face, you could see a web of worries apparent right there. The onlookers might have guessed that this fury was due to the burden of her decision, which was emotionally too painful for her to bear. But Dorothy's mind was working in a different direction. She never loved Roberto, nor did she ever love her first two husbands, Fred McFall and Axel Bren Johansson. An emotion like love was not known to her, at least after what she had seen over the years and what she had learned from her experience. She was actually thinking of a way to support herself and protect her downgrading reputation. It was evident that people no longer liked Dorothy at all because of her repeated jail trips. In the past, she was accused of forgery and running a brothel underneath the identity of a bookkeeping firm, so she was in no mood to take open risk at all this time. She thought about something which was less conspicuous and could regain her draining reputation. Eventually, she found what she was going to do. Her circle of vision had stopped at social work. She could have done social work for reputation, and in the meanwhile, through the earnings from that, she could save more and pay her bills effectively, which was otherwise impossible because of the separation. So she had decided in her mind that she would be selecting 21st and F Streets in Sacramento as the home for all of those members of the society who were being denied the necessity of a roof. By the end of 1978, her boarding house had become fully operational and she was emerging dominantly in the social circles across Sacramento. She started raising her voice on issues like homelessness, deprivation of health facilities, and mental illness. She further started arranging Alcoholic Anonymous meetings frequently at her boarding house to highlight the fact of how she was going to aid those alcoholics who were unable to fight their own battles. Now, those of you who don't know what Alcoholics Anonymous is, then allow me to clear it up for you. Alcoholics Anonymous comprises of an international group of past alcoholics who share their experiences with others and tend to eliminate their addiction to alcohol for the sake of productivity. This was not the only thing she had done. She had also started aiding many deprived individuals in their collection of their Social Security program. She allowed multiple people to start life again at her boarding house by using the Social Security money they received. As she herself belonged to a Hispanic family, therefore, her target remained the Hispanics usually. She was seen as a savior in the Hispanic circles at that time because she not only used to provide them with a home, but also funded charity galas, events, and varying scholarships. All these big and little steps of her made her a respectable member of the Sacramento Hispanic community, who started considering her one of their own kin. The most shocking part was the change in her physical appearance, alongside her new role. Though she was a middle-aged woman, she still adopted the look of a granny in her 60s by turning her hair gray, wearing cute granny glasses, and taking up the attire which was simpler than ever. This earned her the nickname Gray. All this had further helped her a lot in gaining the trust of the people, but what was running in her mind was unknown to all. In one of her many social aid meetings, she met a Hispanic man named Pedro Angel Montalvo. Her bond strengthened with Pedro because of their shared interest, and they married. However, the facade of the marriage was soon exposed when Pedro left her right after a week of marriage. But for Dorothy, this didn't matter any longer, for she had wanted this marriage out of her strategy to establish her roots strongly with the Hispanic community and nothing else. She had a way with people. Perhaps that's why a lot of people became easily attracted to what she said. When she started raising her voice for the social cause, multiple people accepted her as the leader, and they entrusted her with the responsibility of working on their social security checks. Most of these people were residing in the boarding house of Dorothy. Once she established herself in the community, she started her earlier business of forgery. This time she forged the checks of multiple people whom she had vowed to help. The forgery was noticed by one of her tenants, and upon investigation, it was found that she had forged and cashed almost 34 checks from the federal Social Security that were released in her tenants' names. Right after she was convicted, orders for recovery and payment of $4,000 were released from the court on probation of 5 years. Now, at this point, one must have thought that she would have turned into a better person after this lesson. Obviously, because $4,000 is a huge sum, and if there was a normal person like us, we would have surely have tried to change our ways, because who wants to work like animals to pay restitution for months? But Dorothy didn't show a single twitch of pain or trouble on her face. It seemed as if she was resistant to the jurisdiction, and that's when things started turning really grave. At first, her business partner and also one of her housemates, 53-year-old Ruth Monroe, ended up dying mysteriously. The initial forensics showed the indication of high levels of codeine and acetaminophen in her bloodstream. Monroe was known to be a previous addict, but no such thing could be expected out of her, so Gray was suspected of her murder. She clearly wiped her hands of that and explained that it was a result of Monroe's own doings because of her terminally ill husband. At that time, police were also unable to find any potential proof which would indicate that Dorothy was behind this, so they dropped the charges against her. No sooner than that, the police once again questioned Dorothy. This time the complaint was Malcolm Mckenzie, who was 74 and was a tenant in her boarding house. He explained everything in much detail about how Gray tried to drug him and force his Social Security check out of him. The allegations made by him were of a severe nature, so Dorothy had to visit for another 5 years till 1985. This woman had something strange in her mind because she used no single opportunity to squeeze her benefit. Even in jail, she developed her relationship with her pen pal, Everson Gilmouth. The old man was 77 and owned a red Ford pickup. The relationship was quite an enchanting one, at least for Gilmouth, because he had handed Dorothy over his pickup, which was later used to dump pieces of him. I know that seems like a dark joke, but what happened to Gilmouth was not a joke at all. Right after her release, Dorothy found numerous details about Gilmouth and found that he was receiving a pension. So greed struck her once again, and she not only killed Gilmouth, but also cut him into pieces later so that dumping her boyfriend could become easier. Now, if you're thinking about what might have happened to the pension of Gilmouth, Dorothy's mind had developed into a top-notch criminal by that time, so she comfortably forged Gilmouth's letters for 3 consistent years and kept on receiving his pension. Only if the internet had worked in that era. This insanity has been controlled. She hired Ismael Flores, who was entrusted with 2 jobs. First, he had to do some wood paneling in her house, and then had to construct a 6x3x2 box for keeping books and additional stuff. She not only gave him $800 for his service, but also handed him over the Ford pickup. But not before one last ride. Now, you might have guessed where we're heading, or actually where she was heading to. She had taken all the pieces of her boyfriend together into the box and then dumped them at a household junk dumping site near a riverbank, which was later found by a fisherman, and then the gruesome details became clear. Things kept going on like this for Dorothy, who was now becoming an expert in murder, as she took the aid of Chief, her handyman, to dig the backyard of the boarding house and then covered it with the concrete slab. It was like an open grave, and many noticed this from the neighborhood too. The strange thing was that even Chief had disappeared right after this tedious duty. In the winter of 1988, the missing case of Alvaro Bert Montoya was one that gained attention. The police raised their suspicions about Dorothy since she was still receiving his checks. Upon carrying out a detailed investigation of the place, not just Montoya's body was recovered, but Leona Carpenter, James Gallup, and Dorothy Miller were also found. There were almost 7 bodies in total, which she had buried in her backyard without any fear. Many of the detectives expressed that it was like seeing a living graveyard in the back of the house. Even when the dead bodies were found, this lady was 59 at the time, was considered harmless considering her age. Though she was a suspect, the doubts about her were not very strongly developed until she gave them the bait on her own. When she was allowed to grab a coffee by the police force, she ran from Sacramento and fled to Los Angeles, where she once again started her hunt for the next possible victim. She met an old pensioner in her bar and started inclining towards him. However, she failed, and the life of the pensioner was saved when the pensioner remembered seeing her in the news for the murder cases of 7 people. He was quick to inform the local police, who arrested her immediately. After the investigations, it was found that she had killed almost 9, including her ex-boyfriend as well. Her trial proved to be tough because the jury had multiple views considering her age. Some members of the jury were in favor of giving her life imprisonment without parole, while others demanded her execution since she was charged with both first-degree and second-degree murders. John O'Mara, who was a prosecutor at the time in the district attorney's office, knew the nature of the crimes. He even repeated before the court that if she will be given life, then what was the fault of all those people who were killed by her? They were equally loving and deserving to live. Eventually, the jury convicted her of 3 murders, considering the doubtful testimonies which were presented by her defense, and a verdict on her lifetime imprisonment was issued by the court. Even though Dorothy knew that she committed those murders, yet she kept on defying herself as innocent because she believed that those people had died a natural death, and all she was trying to do was to save them. At this point, some people also started believing that somehow Dorothy was not mentally stable, and her past traumas of abuse and negligence had provoked her to do such a thing. Even her defense lawyer demanded therapy on her behalf, as they believed that she was at an age where committing such crimes was attributed to past emotions and memories. Because of her bitter memories of the soft, she was inclined to direct violence on those weaker than her. Whether she was mentally ill or did actually commit all those crimes knowingly, no one knows for sure except Dorothy herself, who died on March 27, 2011, in the prison at Chowchilla. Even her death was a mystery because the jail representatives reported that she was not having any unusual symptoms of illness but normal fevers. Right after her imprisonment, her boarding house was empty and it languished in carelessness. Eventually, the neighborhood reported that the place had become haunted, where they had seen multiple sightings of the people who were killed at the house along with the ghost of Dorothy herself. In 2015, the Ghost Adventures team had covered this house in their series, where they reportedly claimed to sight the ghosts of those who were murdered at the place.
I'm out front of the house in the garden where Betty Palmer was found.
Later on, the death house was renovated and sold to new owners. What was the true identity of Dorothy Puente, the death house landlady, will remain concealed because there are multiple theories associated with psychology, Satanism, cult, and obviously demonology, and different people hold different emotions regarding this particular case. What do you think was the reason for all those merciless killings? Her troubled childhood or the quest for money? Let me know in the comments. Well, if you feel that this case was an intriguing one, like this video and share it with all your friends. Also, subscribe to our AF Crime channel for finding more shocking tales around the world. And if you have any criminal cases that you'd like me to investigate, share it in the comment section below.